Hi, I'm Lisa Lorraine H, and today we're going to talk about the visionary artist Hilma AF Klint. So who was Hilma AF Klint? She was a Swedish artist who was becoming known most notably for her abstract paintings, which predate the supposed forerunners of abstract expressionism. Now, over 75 years after her death, she's becoming recognised as a pioneer. So AF Klint was born in Stockholm in 1816 to a Protestant family. At 20, she enrolled herself at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts, where she made her name as an accomplished yet unadventurous portrait, landscape and botanical artist. However, AF Klint had a secret. In 1897, at the age of 35, she began participating in spiritual gatherings while developing her interest in esoteric belief systems. So AF Klint's paintings reflect her interest in theosophy, particularly her love for Hina Blavatsky, the founder of the Theosophical Society in 1875, and the author of The Secret Doctrine, the synthesis of science, religion and philosophy. It is also possible that Edvard Munch influenced the Swedish artist, as he had a much talked about exhibition in a gallery space next to her studio. This exhibition may be where AF Klint saw artwork that turned away from the external reality towards an internal one. So AF Klint seemed to work in near isolation, except for her communications with four of her women, who gathered in a northern Stockholm studio. It appeared that her version of the non-figurative had no public dialogue. When AF Klint died in 1944 at the age of 81, her will stated that her large volume of paintings, texts and notes could not be viewed until she had been dead for at least 20 years. She believed that the world was not ready for her message. However, her work was not shown until 40 years later at an exhibition called The Spiritual in Art, and a further 30 years until her work was shown again and fully appreciated. This exhibition was a travelling solo show which began in 2013 and ended in 2019, called Hilma AF Klint, a Pioneer of Abstraction. So the abstraction in AF Klint's work developed from 1896 to 1906. She created her imagery using a variety of materials such as tempera, watercolour, graphite and gouache. During this time, the artist joined four other women to form a group called the Five. The five women were acting as mediums to reach a higher level of consciousness. Thankfully, minutes were kept during these meetings, describing how beings identified themselves by name to convey messages to humanity through pictures. They introduced themselves as Gregor, Emil, Clemens and Ananda. They communicated through automatic drawings, where an individual suppresses conscious control over the making process. This requires a state of passivity and rejection of habitual patterns. When AF Klint was 43, she accepted a commission by Emil to produce the paintings for the temple. She created this commission between 1906 and 1915, and it became her central body of work. She describes, "The paintings were painted through me, without any preliminary drawings and with great force. I had no idea what the paintings were supposed to depict. Nevertheless, I worked swiftly and surely without changing a single brushstroke." This project resulted in the production of 193 images categorized into series, subgroups and groups. This whole sequence is described as AF Klint's pursuit of understanding the original oneness, a basic unity that she believed existed at the beginning of world's creation. It is also suggested that AF Klint felt that this pure depiction of reality had been lost, given away to a world of polarities: good, evil, woman, man, matter, spirit, the macrocosm and microcosm. So why is AF Klint a visionary artist? So Jung states that it is essential to distinguish between the two entirely different modes of creation to judge an artwork effectively. He describes, "In one case it is a conscious product shaped and designed to have the effect intended, but in the other we are dealing with an event originating in the unconscious." Jung describes these two modes as the psychological and visionary. The former is directed by the ego and exists within the limits of comprehension. However, the visionary is strange in form, with content that can only be understood intuitively. So for more information on this, watch the previous video titled The Visionary and Psychological Mode of Creativity. The visionary mode forces itself upon the artist, bringing their own form, reminding us of our dreams and nighttime fears as opposed to our experiences in everyday life. With this mode, the artist is overwhelmed by a flood of thoughts and images that they never intended to create and which his will could never have brought into being. So Jung describes, "These works positively force themselves upon the author. His hand is seized. His pen writes things that his mind contemplates with amazement. The work brings with it its own form. Anything he wants to add is rejected, and what he himself would like to reject is thrust back at him. While his conscious mind stands amazed and empty before this phenomenon, he is overwhelmed by a flood of thoughts and images which he never intended to create, and which his own will could never have brought into being. Yet, in spite of himself, he is forced to admit that it is his own self speaking, his own inner nature revealing itself and uttering things which he could never have entrusted his tongue." So AF Klint's experience of communicating with spirits could be interpreted as an archetypal encounter, which resulted in the production of visionary and symbolic imagery. It seems that her conscious mind could not make sense of the interaction, resulting in her announcing possession of spirits. This proclamation may seem bizarre to the modern mind. However, it is important to consider the possibility that spirituality and mysticism acted as humanity's attempt to understand the complicated psychological system. So, thanks for watching. If you leave a comment so I know I'm not talking to myself, that would be great.